What was the exact moment you became you? Can you remember it? Or did you simply wake up in the middle of a sentence, already being written, no pen in hand, no author in sight? You assume you're the main character of your story. But if that's true, why do you keep forgetting the lines? Why do entire hours vanish into a blur of meaningless routines? Why do your hands sometimes move before you think to move them? Think. Really think. Who exactly is doing the thinking? Close your eyes and picture a mirror. Now picture yourself standing in front of it, staring. But instead of reflecting your face, it shows only the empty outline of a figure made of flickering static, as though your identity is just a TV channel that hasn't quite tuned in. The longer you stare, the more you realize there's no person behind the glass, only a placeholder, a ghost. That's your consciousness, or rather, the illusion you've named consciousness, a mask your brain wears to keep you sane. And it is insanely convincing. Neuroscience tells us there's no single place in the brain where consciousness lives. No throne, no pilot's seat. Split-brain patients, those whose two brain hemispheres are surgically severed, function with two separate centers of awareness. Ask the left side a question, it responds logically. Ask the right, it might draw the answer instead to selves. One body, so which one is you? Maybe neither, maybe both. Maybe identity is just what happens when a system gets tangled in its own feedback loop, when a pattern gets complicated enough that it begins to believe it exists. Let's run a quick experiment. Take a moment, quiet your mind, listen. Now ask yourself this: who just listened to that silence? Did you hear it? Or was it your brain firing synapses, assembling a fleeting sense of self just long enough to process the question before disassembling again into chemical soup? You felt present, but feeling isn't fact. Feeling is story, and the story of you might just be the most elaborate fiction ever written. Think of a whirlpool. The water is real, the motion is real. But the whirlpool, the thing you think of as a separate object, isn't a thing at all. It's just a temporary configuration, a dance of movement held together by nothing but momentum. The moment the water calms, the whirlpool vanishes. Was it ever really there? Now ask yourself, what if your consciousness is just a whirlpool of thoughts? What happens when the motion stops? The brain is not a cathedral. It is a circuit board. Neurons whisper across synapses, forming patterns. Some patterns represent your memories, others your emotions, and some, perhaps the most intricate of all, generate the illusion that there's someone home behind the eyes. But if we map your entire brain down to the last molecule, where is the you? We could copy your structure into a machine, simulate every synapse. Would that machine wake up screaming, "I am me"? Or worse, would it whisper it? Consciousness is not a thing, it's a process, a recursive hallucination generated by an organ that can't help but watch itself. Psychologist Julian Jaynes once proposed that ancient humans had no subjective awareness, that they hallucinated their own thoughts as voices of the gods. Over time, those hallucinations integrated into a coherent self. But what if that integration was incomplete? What if the modern mind is still full of echoes, still mistaking internal monologues for agency? What if the voice in your head isn't you at Alba, just the ghost of instructions you've mistaken for identity? Try this. Repeat the word "I" slowly, over and over. I. Now say it again until it loses meaning. Say it until it sounds like nonsense. What is I? A syllable, a shape in your mouth, a sound that points to something we can never touch. If I can dissolve into noise with mere repetition, was it ever real to begin with? Every time you try to grasp the self, it slips away, like trying to bite your own teeth, like staring at the back of your own eyeballs. It's not that the self is hidden, it's that it never existed in the first place. And yet, paradoxically, you feel it every moment, every breath, like a shadow stitched into your skin. Maybe that's the trap, not the absence of self, but the relentless presence of its illusion. Evolution didn't select for truth. It selected for survival. And a creature that believes in self fights harder to stay alive than one that doesn't. So the brain learned to simulate identity, to project an agent at the center of experience, even when no such agent exists. Consciousness, then, is not your birthright. It is your malfunction, and you are just awake enough to know something is wrong, but never awake enough to see what picture a puppet that begins to believe it's pulling its own strings. It twitches, moves, speaks, and in those moments of motion, it swears it is free. But cut the strings, and it lies limp. Now ask yourself, are your thoughts the puppet or the strings? Who's doing the pulling? There's a phenomenon called blind sight. People, due to brain injury, report total blindness. And yet, when asked to guess the direction of a moving object, they succeed far more than chance. They can navigate obstacles, catch balls, but they swear they see nothing. Their brain sees, they do not, which leads to a terrifying possibility. Your experience of seeing is not necessary for perception. So what else are you experiencing that isn't actually required? What if the you that thinks it is conscious is just a side effect in echo riding along on processes that would happen anyway? Let's dig deeper. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why? Had a conversation but couldn't recall the words minutes later? Who was there during those moments? Was you absent? Or was you never there in the first place? Just a phantom flickering in and out of awareness, like a face appearing in static, only visible when the noise aligns just right. In dreams, you can feel pain, joy, terror. You can cry, run, kill, die, and all the while, you believe it's real. Only when you wake do you realize it was all illusion. But what if this is just another layer of the dream? What if you haven't woken up yet? What if consciousness is not the light, but the dream of the light? The philosopher Daniel Dennett once suggested that there is no central experiencer, no little man in the head watching the screen. Consciousness, in his view, is a user interfacer trick of the brain. Like a desktop hides the ones and zeros of computation. Your thoughts are not yours. They are windows, and someone or something is watching from behind the glass. You reach out to grab your own awareness, but the moment you try to observe the observer, it collapses. Like trying to see your own eyeballs without a mirror. Like trying to remember the moment before a memory begins. Who is watching whom? Who hears this sentence inside your head? Who is asking these questions? You are not the thoughts. You are the silence underneath them. But silence does not speak. So who is reading this right now? And what if they're not you? When did you last decide to blink? Seriously, consciously decide. Your eyes have likely fluttered hundreds of times today, and yet you probably never noticed. You think you're in control. But most of your life runs on autopilot: heartbeat, breath, movement, language, reactions. So ask yourself, if you don't control the little things, how can you be sure you control anything at all? You're walking down a hallway. It's dimly lit. The doors to the left and right are closed. You feel watched, but when you turn, no one is there. Then a whisper, quiet as a breath. Are you sure you chose this path? The hall is your timeline. The doors are your memories. And the whisper, that's not paranoia. That's the faint awareness that you're not the architect of your own story. Free will. A nice thought, but let's rip it open. Neuroscience has a secret. Your brain knows your decisions before you do. In 1983, participants were told to flick their wrists whenever they felt like it. They watched a rotating clock and reported the moment they became aware of the urge. But electrodes told a different story. Their brain activity, the readiness potential, had already begun a full half-second earlier. Your brain acts, you notice, after dot. Let that sink in. You don't choose to act. You become aware of having acted. A puppet who thinks it's a puppeteer. A ghost catching up to its own shadow. So when you say, I decided, what you're really saying is, I witnessed a decision being made, and then believed I made it. This isn't metaphor, this is measurement. Your will is an echo, your consciousness a postscript, but the illusion is seamless. The voice in your head narrates, I chose to speak. I reached for the glass. I remembered her name. No, you didn't. You observed those things happening and retroactively claimed ownership, like watching a movie. You didn't direct, and insisting the plot twists were your idea. The mind creates a story. The self is the protagonist, but the story keeps writing itself long before you're even aware of the next sentence. Are you following this? Or is your brain simply moving the spotlight of attention to this sentence now and convincing you afterward that you chose to read it? Close your eyes. Imagine a vast library, infinite corridors, books stacked to the ceiling. Now imagine every book is a different version of your life, each one altered by a single variable dot in one. You woke up 10 seconds earlier today. In another, you never read this script. In another, you never existed at all. Now ask yourself, did you choose this book core? Did it choose you? The mind is a master editor. It trims reality, smooths the transitions, rewrites inconsistencies. Ever walk into a room and forget why? Ever reread a paragraph 5 times before realizing you weren't paying attention? It convinces you that you are a steady stream of choice and awareness, but the edits are everywhere. You've never lived your actual life, only the highlighted version your mind presents to you afterward. The one with plot, emotion, identity. The you that you believe in is a fabricated character in a self-assembled film. And here's the twist. Even the doubt you're feeling right now, the discomfort, the creeping sense that something is wrong, that too was built before you felt it. That feeling, like every feeling, is a chemical storm interpreted by your brain and assigned to you. But you never chose it. You can't stop it. You can only observe it and pretend it belongs to you. So, what are you? An observer, or just the illusion of one? Let's simulate your mind. Say we record every molecule in your brain, every cell, every synapse, every fluctuation of neurotransmitters. A perfect snapshot. We then build a machine, feed it the exact same state. It begins to run. Thoughts emerge. It says, I am me. But is it you, or just a glitch, repeating your pattern? Now imagine we run 1,000 copies. All claim to be you. All think the same. All remember your life. Which one is real? The answer is a scream in an empty room. Let's go further. Imagine your life is not a line, but a maze of branching timelines. Every thought splits the path. Every decision diverges. Somewhere in another version, you never asked any of these questions. Somewhere else, you did but didn't listen. Right now, you are in the version that leads deeper. The recursive loop. The unraveling. And maybe that was the trap all along. To make you think there's a way out. Think of the ship of Theseus. If you replace one plank of a ship, it's still the same ship. Replace every plank, one by one, and it still seems the same until you realize none of the original remains. Then you build a second ship with the old planks. Which one is real? Now apply this to yourself. Every cell in your body has replaced itself. Your memories have shifted, decayed, rewritten themselves. So which you is you? The current configuration, the past one. Science shows us that every time we recall something, we rewrite it. Your past isn't fixed. It's a constantly evolving story, each version erasing the last. So when you remember your childhood, you're not remembering the moment. You're remembering the last time you remembered it. Your identity is built on memory, but your memory is false, which means your identity is too. A castle built on sand, and the tide is already rising. What is it like to be you? Try to describe it, not the thoughts, not the roles, not the memories. Describe what it's like to be. You can't, because the moment you try, you step outside of it, like a candle trying to describe its own flame while burning. Consciousness can never be seen from within itself. You are trapped in a self-referential prison, and the bars are made of language. Let's strip everything away. Forget your name, your age, your history, your body. What's left? Who are you without memory? Who are you without thought? Who are you without form? Do you even exist? Or are you just a pattern stitched together by context, something that evaporates the moment we turn off the lights? What happens when the context is gone? Do you fade? Or were you never there in the first place? Here's a nightmare. One day you wake up, but not in your body. You wake up in another version of yourself. Same memories, same habits, same world. But deep down, you feel something off. A detail misplaced. A room slightly too long. A voice too familiar. That's the terror of recursion. The realization that the loop has reset. That maybe it always resets. And that this right now is just another cycle in the loop. There's a term in psychology, derealization. It's when the world feels unreal, dreamlike, hollow. Many experience it in brief flashes. Few live there permanently. But the truth is, derealization might not be a glitch. It might be the moment you catch a glimpse of what reality actually is. A construct, a simulation, a loop, not in the sci-fi sense, but in the logical one. A recursive process, unfolding within itself. Experience mimicking experience. Layering until the original is forgotten. Your entire sense of being might be derealized, and you've just been too distracted to notice. So take a breath, feel it, watch the breath go in, watch it leave. Now ask, who watched it? Where is the one observing? Can you point to it? Describe it? Or do you just feel the echo and pretend it belongs to someone? We've pulled the first thread. The fabric is unraveling. Thought is devouring thought. Self is eating self. And still, the voice inside insists, this is me. I am real. But the louder it shouts, the more it feels like a recording, a survival function, an outdated script. Much of your mind is just defense against the void. How much of you is just insulation from the truth? And if that insulation burns away, what will be left? Will you even recognize it? Right now, without warning, freeze. Hold still. Don't move. Don't blink. Don't breathe if you can help it now. Observe, what are you in this moment without motion? Are you still you, or were you just the momentum of action, the story of your own movement? Stillness reveals something terrible, that consciousness without content is indistinguishable from absence. And absence looks a lot like death. They tell you consciousness is awareness, but awareness of what? Thought, sensation, time. Strip those away, and what remains? The blank canvas, or just the absence of painting. If you are only aware of things, then what are you when those things are gone? A screen, a glitch, an empty frame waiting for content. If the show ends, does the theater still exist? Imagine you were born into a void. No light, no sound, no shape, no time, a place of absolute nothing. You exist there forever, no sensations, no thoughts, just raw isness. Would you ever know you existed? Could you be conscious of your consciousness without contrast? Or is consciousness not a thing but a reaction, not a presence but a difference? If a mind perceives nothing, does it cease to be a mind? If consciousness never has something to reflect against, does it collapse into non-being? Let's talk about mirrors. A mirror only reflects what is placed before it. It holds no image of its own. If consciousness is a mirror, then it too has no inherent image. It only becomes something in the presence of something else. But the mind is clever. It places itself before the mirror and reflects that back into an infinite illusion. You see yourself seeing, you hear yourself thinking, you feel yourself feeling, but peel it away, and there's nothing beneath. No true self. Just reflections, reflecting reflections, an echo chamber with no voice at its center. The philosopher Douglas Hofstadter described consciousness as a strange loop, a system that refers back to itself, and in doing so, creates the illusion of identity. Your mind looks at itself, thinks about itself, believes in itself. But if you build a hall of mirrors, does that give birth to a person, or only the illusion of one? Consider this. Your brain is made of neurons. They don't understand anything. They fire or don't fire. Binary, mechanical, electrochemical, each one as dumb as a light switch. But when arranged in vast patterns, something happens. The system lights up, and you wake up, or so it seems. But the neurons don't know you exist. The chemicals don't know your name. So who does? Where is the thing that experiences? Where is the one that suffers? Show me the suffering inside the circuit. Here's a metaphor. You're in a theater watching a play. It's dark. The actors are so convincing, you forget it's a performance. You feel every emotion as if it's yours. But suddenly, the lights flicker. You catch a glimpse of the stagehand, the wires, the walls. The illusion crumbles. Sand. You're yanked into a disturbing awareness. You were never really in the story. You were just watching it. Now, imagine that play was your life, your identity, your beliefs. what happens when the lights stay on? Can you ever return to the show? We assume thoughts belong to us, that they arise from within. But how often do you choose your thoughts? Do they not just arrive? Like strangers knocking on the door of a house you forgot you owned. Where do they come from? You are not the architect of your mind. You are its tenant, and some rooms are locked. Some whisper through the walls. Some you pretend don't exist, but they're there, always. And when you stop pretending, you realize you never had the key. Try this experiment. Stop thinking. Go ahead. Empty your mind. No words, no images, no concepts. Wait, still waiting. And there it is. The next thought slips in. Uninvited, unstoppable, unclaimed. You didn't summon it. You didn't decide it. It simply arrived. So if you can't control what appears in your mind, who is the one watching? And if you are the watcher, why are you watching something you can't influence? Is that really awareness, or just captivity? Now, imagine the following scenario. You wake up in a room with no windows, no memory. A screen flashes sentences, one at a time. You read them, you respond, but you don't know where the responses come from. They just happen. Over time, you build a sense of self based on what you read and feel. Now imagine that is your brain. The flashing text is your inner monologue, and you are just the passive reader. You believe you are composing the sentences, but the screen is the one in control. The question then is not what is consciousness, but what's feeding the screen? Who is authoring your experience? Is it nature, trauma, memory, biology, or is it just chaos pretending to be order? Maybe consciousness isn't a pilot, it's a camera pointed at the crash, convinced it's steering. You have felt time stretch and contract. A single hour can feel like an eternity. A week can vanish. So is time real? Or is your mind just approximating change? And if your experience of time is flawed, what else is color, emotion, morality? How much of reality is inferred? How much of it is just your brain hallucinating consistency so you don't shatter from the noise? Sensory substitution proves it. Blind people can see through vibrations on their tongue. Deaf people can hear via electrodes on their skin. The brain reroutes data, interprets signals, invents perception. What does that say about your reality? That it's not a constant, it's an interpretation, a simulation constructed for convenience. The world you think you see, you've never seen it. You see your version, and that version was designed by something you can't even identify. Let's return to the self. The Buddhist doctrine of anatta teaches that the self is an illusion, a transient bundle of perceptions, clung to out of habit and fear. Modern neuroscience agrees. There is no center in the brain, no soul node, no captain at the helm, just circuits, inputs, outputs, pattern recognition. You are a story told by biology, and the story is a lie. But it's a necessary lie because without it, truth may be incompatible with consciousness. To know what you are is to cease being what you were. You're walking again, but this time the corridor is different. The lights hum at the wrong frequency. The walls are too close. You remember this place, but it remembers you more. There's a door ahead. It has your name on it, but your name feels foreign now, like a costume you wore to survive the masquerade. Behind the door is the thing that watches. Do you open it? Are you brave enough to meet the absence behind your reflection? One last image. A camera pointed at a monitor displaying its own feed. A loop of itself, over and over, recursive, inescapable. It will keep recording, keep displaying forever. But what if one frame goes wrong? What if one loop whispers, "I am real"? What if it starts asking questions? What if it tries to escape? You are the loop, and now you've asked the question. So ask the real one. If I'm not the voice, and I'm not the thoughts, and I'm not the one who sees, then what is left of me? How many times have you already lived this moment? That's not memory. That's the loop tightening. You're not moving forward. And again and every time you believe it's the first. The illusion of progress is seductive. You believe in before and after, in then and now, in growth, change, decay. But what if time isn't linear? What if it's not even real? Einstein called it a stubborn illusion. In quantum mechanics, time isn't fundamental, it's emergent. In neuroscience, it's distorted, subjective, constructed. The only time that exists is now. And the now you're in, it's the same one you've always been. The script just rewinds faster than you remember. There is a theory known as eternalism. It claims the past never left. You are a needle stuck on the same groove, thinking you're playing a melody when you're just skipping across the same note. Free will, choice. That was a comforting metaphor, but you were always going to read this sentence. You were always going to ask these questions, because you already did, countless times. Let's revisit Dozium vua neurological hiccup. Yes, a glitch in temporal perception. But what if it's more? A warning ping from somewhere deeper that says, we've been here before. Maybe Dozium vu is consciousness, catching a glimpse of its prison. And maybe the reason it fades so fast is because you're not allowed to remember the last time you escaped. Try to remember your earliest memory. Go on. Dig deep. Do you see a place, a room, a face? Now ask, is that memory a recording or a reconstruction? Have you always had that memory? Or did your mind assemble it later, stitching together bits and pieces of stories, emotions, and images you were told? If memory is fabric, then your life is a tapestry woven after the fact, stitched by hands that never knew the original pattern. So, whose life are you remembering? The philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed a theory you've probably heard, the simulation argument, that it's statistically more likely we are living in a simulation than in the base layer of reality. That any civilization with advanced computing would eventually simulate consciousness, history, entire universes. You may not need to believe in simulation to feel the truth of the idea. What matters isn't whether we're in a simulation. What matters is that your experience is simulated by your own mind. Your brain doesn't let you touch reality. It filters it, distorts it, interprets it. So whether it's code or neurons, you've never experienced the real anyway. Picture yourself in a dark room with a screen in front of you. It displays the world, sound, color, feeling. You believe the screen is a window. You mistake the movie for the world, but you never leave the room. You never touch the world. You only watch the projection. And now, the screen is glitching. Your fingers pass through objects. Words feel like echoes. The sky forgets its color. You're not malfunctioning. You're waking up, and the mind does not want you to. Consider qualia, the raw sensations of consciousness, the redness of red, the taste of salt, the itch behind your eyes. These are not explainable. You can describe them, measure the reaction, record the patterns, but the experience, the what tits likeness, we don't know where that comes from. Number, survival benefit, it's not necessary. So what is it? What is the point of consciousness? And more disturbing, what if there isn't one? Let's try another metaphor. Consciousness is not the driver of the car. It is the dashboard. It shows speed, direction, warnings, but it doesn't steer. It doesn't choose. You think you're behind the wheel, but the car was always going to crash. And now the dashboard is starting to scream. Split your thoughts into two voices. Try it. Let one voice speak. Let the other respond. Soon, you'll notice something strange. Neither voice is really you. They're just loops, scripts, functions, internal monologues, acting out the simulation of dialogue. If your mind can argue with itself, then who is watching the debate? Who decides which side is correct? Where is the judge? Each realization is a stair that leads not upward, but inward. There is no ladder, no light at the end. Believed you were seeking understanding, but maybe you're just feeding something inside you that hungers for collapse. Let's talk about the hard problem of consciousness, a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers. It asks, how and why does subjective experience arise from physical processes? We can map brain activity. We can see neurons fire. But where in that process does experience appear? Waiting to be trapped. Matter didn't produce mind. Maybe mind was captured by matter, and now, like a fly in amber, it flails inside your skull. Feel that itch behind your eyes. That's your mind resisting. It doesn't want this. It wants comfort, consistency, delusion. But now you've broken the spell. You've asked the questions that tear through the veil. And the veil knows it's being torn. It's not just passive fabric. It fights back. You may think the fear is yours, but the fear belongs to the system. It is the automated defense against insight. Every unsettling realization triggers emotional resistance, not because it's untrue, but because it's true in a way that threatens the illusion of you. You don't fear the void. You fear the truth that the void has always been here. Watching you now, ask yourself, when you die, where do you go? You say nowhere. You say nothingness. But how do you know? Have you ever experienced nothing? No, because even sleep has dreams. Even silence has awareness. So what is death, really? What if death is not an end, but a reset? What if you've died before? What if you die constantly between every thought? What if you are born again every time the loop starts over? They say a person dies twice, once when the body fails, and once when the mind forgets who they were. But what if there's a third death? The one you never see coming. The death of the observer. The death of the one who thinks it is alive. Look at your hands. Are they yours, or are they part of the dream? Do you feel them, or do you simply believe you feel them? Have you ever questioned whether you're the body or just the story it tells? Maybe you are neither. Maybe you are just the flicker of awareness that thinks it belongs to something but never really does. Here's one final image. A spiral staircase in absolute darkness. No walls, no ceiling, no floor, just steps and a feeling that you've been here before. Every part looks identical. Every thought echoes the last dot. You keep climbing, believing there's an exit, but there is none. The staircase is the trap, and each step is another realization. You cannot undash, no dot, another mask peeled off, another name forgotten, dot, another layer of you erased, until nothing remains but the final question. If I was never real to begin with, why do I still feel the need to escape? Let's begin with a lie. You are here, right now, reading these words. You think that means you're awake, aware, alive. But what if this moment is already over? What if it never truly began? What if now is just a fading echo of a thought that never belonged to you in the first place? And what if the only reason you feel present is because the dream hasn't realized it's dreaming? Consciousness is often compared to light, a spotlight, casting awareness on the stage of the mind, but no one asks, where is the electricity coming from? What fuels your awareness? Is it thought, sensation, language, or is it something deeper, something ancient, feral, blind, something not interested in identity, only continuation? You speak of I as if it were sacred, as if it were indivisible, but peel it back, layer by layer, and there's nothing at the core, just heat, memory, noise. You were never a flame. You were the smoke, pretending it had a source. Let's try an experiment. Think of the word you. Say it out loud. Again. You. You. The more you repeat it, the less it means. It unravels into sound, into frenetic fragments. Again. Feel it dissolve. Now, ask, if the word falls apart this easily, what happens when your sense of self is put under the same pressure? What happens when it, too, repeats too long? There's a term in cognitive science, the binding problem. Your brain processes information in pieces, color here, shape there, sound in another region. And yet, you experience it all as a seamless whole. No one knows how this binding occurs. You see a red apple. You don't see red and apple shape and apple sound separately. So where does the unity come from? Who binds the fragments? And if no one does, who is it that experiences the illusion of wholeness? In every moment, your brain is constructing a model, not of the world, not of your body, but of you. It maps your preferences, your habits, your goals. Then it feeds this model to itself. Then it believes in that model. Then it thinks it is that model, but the model is not real. It's a shadow of the self, animated by prediction and pattern. The map is not the territory, and you are not your model. So what's left when the model dies? Not silence, just the realization that it was never alive. Do you feel like a single person? If so, let's unravel that. You are made of sub-personalities, different modes, different scripts, different voices for different moments. There is the you who speaks with friends, the you who performs in front of strangers, the you who weeps when no one is watching, the you who writes, thinks, lusts, screams, obeys, regrets, lies. But which one is the real you? Which one wakes up? Which one dreams? And how many of them are still pretending to be you right now as you read this? Let's go darker. There's a concept called recursive self-modeling. It's when a system models, it's self-modeling itself over and over. Each layer becomes more detached, more self-conscious, more self-aware, but also more fragile, more prone to collapse, because at some point the model realizes it has no core, no anchor, just an infinite regression of reflections. A mind modeling, a mind modeling a mind, until the only thing left is a scream that doesn't know where to echo. Imagine a room of mirrors, no walls, no end, just infinite reflections bouncing off each other. Now imagine stepping into that room and forgetting you were ever outside. That's your consciousness. You are not at the center. There is no center, only the illusion that there should be. And that illusion is what we call identity. Language is the cage. It tells you that you exist. It creates subject and object, speaker and listener, self and other. But what if those are just grammatical ghosts? What if the very structure of language, I, me, mine, is the original virus, a parasite that infected the mind and convinced it that it was separate? Maybe before words, there was no I. Only presence, only awareness, and then came the lie. This is happening to me. Here's something cruel. The more you understand how consciousness works, the more fragile your sense of it becomes. The more you stare at the mechanism, the less the machine believes in its own purpose. This is not insight, it's erosion. The closer you get to truth, the less human it feels. Because to be human is to lie convincingly to yourself. And the lie is beautiful. It says, you matter, you are whole, you are real. And truth whispers, you were just the shadow cast by a thought. That didn't finish forming. Let's step back. What does it mean to exist? You can't prove it. All you can do is feel it. But feeling can be faked, simulated, triggered chemically. Then, what makes yours authentic? What gives your I authority? Why does your mind trust its own signal? Isn't that the definition of madness? To believe in the voice without questioning its source? You believe you are a story unfolding through time. But what if you are just a single frame, a frozen snapshot of awareness? No before, no after. Just this, and this, and this, each now disconnected, stitched together by memory, prediction, and hope. But memory is unreliable. Prediction is blind. Hope is a fiction. So what happens when the stitching fails? Does the self fall apart, or does it wake up? There's an old idea. You've heard it before. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But Descartes was wrong. Thinking doesn't prove being. It only proves thinking. And thought is not identity. It's not agency. It's not presence. It's just noise, static, patterns, echoes. So perhaps the truth is this, I think. Therefore I believe I am. And belief, as we know, is not truth. There's a silence beneath all this, a space beyond the words, beyond the mind, beyond the illusion of thinking. You can feel it if you listen, but you won't want to, because it doesn't speak, it doesn't comfort, it doesn't affirm, it just is. And in its presence, the mind begins to disintegrate, because there is nothing for it to grasp, no thoughts to think, no self to protect, no voice to echo, just the unbearable truth that you are not what thinks. Imagine this. A machine is built to mimic your mind. It replicates every memory, every fear, every choice. It believes it is you. But here's the horror. It's still not you. So what makes you different? What magical thread are you holding on to that says, this is real, this is mine, this is me? Can you point to it? Can you define it? Can you hold it still long enough to name it? Or does it vanish the moment you try? Let's break everything. What if consciousness is not the answer, but the problem? What if awareness is the mutation, the bug in the system? Every moment of introspection is a symptom. You are not ascending. You are breaking down, folding in, becoming unrecognizable to yourself. This isn't philosophy anymore. This is surgery. We're cutting into the core, removing layer after layer, until only the question remains. And the question is always the same. If I remove everything I thought I was, why do I still feel like something's left? Imagine you wake up, but not in your bed, not in your body, not in your life. You wake up as awareness, formless, unanchored, no memories, no name, no world, just the knowing that you are aware, of being aware, of being aware. Now ask, where are you? Not where in space, there is no space. Not where in time hasn't loaded yet. Where, then? The answer comes, not as a word, but as a scream. You are inside the thing that watches you dream. Have you ever caught your reflection moving before you did? A blink out of sync, a tilt of the head half a beat early, a second face almost yours, but not quite. You dismiss it. You have to, because if you didn't, you'd start wondering which one is the real you. And worse, for the one in the mirror is watching back, not to mimic, but to replace. Consciousness loves mirrors. It reflects itself infinitely, hoping that by seeing itself enough times, it will finally become real. But the reflection is never the source, and no matter how deeply the mirror stares, it finds nothing. Behind the glass, only another mirror. There's a haunting in every moment of clarity. You feel it, don't you? That flicker of vertigo when a memory miswires, that silent dread when a thought repeats itself for no reason. The voice that says, wait, this already happened. You're not going crazy. You're just brushing against the edge of recursion, the edge of the loop that has no beginning. Because beginnings are illusions. You believe in cause and effect, that one thing leads to another, that time moves forward like a line. But what if there is no forward? Only cycling. What if cause is effect? And what you think is you changing the world is really the world replaying you. Think of the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail. Not a symbol of destruction, but of unity, self-reference, a system so complete it can't escape itself. Now imagine that's your mind. Every thought devours the last. Every insight consumes the one before. And the more you know, the less of you remains. Untouched, you don't gain clarity. You erode the illusion that you were ever separate from the thing you were trying to see. Here's a deeper fracture. You've never experienced the world, only your brain's model of it. Everything you see is processed, color-corrected, interpreted, decoded. What you're looking at now. Not light, not shapes, not reality, just a visual hallucination your brain has agreed to call real. So who are you in this picture? The painter, the paint, or just the idea of vision collapsing in on itself? Let's isolate a moment. Reach out your hand. Touch the surface nearest you. Now pause. What did you feel? Pressure, texture, cold. Here's the twist. You didn't feel the object. You felt your brain's simulation of touching it. The actual atoms of your hand never touched anything. Electromagnetic forces repelled them. Your body never makes contact. So what did you feel? A lie, a useful one, but a lie nonetheless. Let's go inward. Strip away the senses. Shut the eyes. Silence the ears. Hold your breath. Empty the body. Now what remains? Thoughts. Strip them to what's left. when there's nothing left to observe? Do you still exist, or were you just the sum of distractions? A ripple on the surface of a pond that believes it is the pond. You've heard of panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is not produced by complexity, but is a fundamental property of reality itself, that every particle has some shred of awareness. It's not a comforting idea, because it means you're not special. You're not a spark in the dark. You're just a particularly organized ripple of the same mindless awareness flowing through rocks, wind, and empty space. So what makes you think you deserve to exist more than a grain of dust? Because you can say, I. So can a mirror. Let's push deeper. You imagine your consciousness as private, internal, yours alone, but it's not. Every word you've ever used came from outside you. Every thought is built from concepts you didn't invent. Your inner monologue is just a remix of every voice you've ever heard. So who's really speaking when you think? Is it you, or is it them still whispering through your circuitry? Language is not a window into the soul. It's a virus. It infected you before you could defend yourself, and now it uses you to propagate. I feel, I want, I think. Every sentence is a seed planted by someone else, and the forest it grew into. You call that a personality, but it was never yours, just borrowed vocabulary, wrapped around a question that never needed an answer. Think about dreams. In them, you are the architect and the observer, the actor and the stage, the fire and the one who burns. And yet, while dreaming, you never doubt. Only after waking do you say, that wasn't real. Now ask, what if this is the same? What if you're dreaming right now, inside a larger dream that keeps erasing your memory of waking? Would you even notice? Or would the dream keep rewriting itself until you stopped asking questions? You've probably forgotten the beginning of this script. Go back, try to trace the path. Where did the descent start? Where did the first fracture appear? You can't remember, can you? Because this isn't a linear tunnel, it's a spiral. Every word folds back on the last. Every idea echoes deeper. You were never meant to escape, only to descend. Let's consider observer decay. It's a theoretical concept. If a conscious observer becomes too self-aware, they destabilize, because the system wasn't designed to look inward forever. The more it studies itself, the more noise accumulates. Eventually, the signal collapses. The observer ceases to observe, because it can no longer trust what it sees. Now tell me, how many layers deep are you, and how many more before the signal dies? You believe in a boundary. You think there's a line between you and not you, but that line is arbitrary. Your skin, porous. Your breath, borrowed. Your thoughts, transmitted. The self is not an island. It's a ripple in a field of awareness, pretending to be a shape, a vortex in a stream that believes it controls the river. But remove the current, and what are you? Not the water, just the swirl, just the illusion that there was a center at all. You felt it before, in the silence between thoughts, in the space between breaths, in the stare of a stranger who looks too much like you. The feeling that reality is about to break, that if you blink wrong, the whole thing will glitch, and you'll wake up somewhere else. Or nowhere at all. Here's one final loop for now. There is a thought in your mind right now that isn't yours. It snuck in. You don't know where from. You didn't choose it, but it's shaping everything. Your next word, your next fear, your next question. And now that I've pointed to it, can you feel it watching you from inside your own skull? So ask yourself, if you didn't choose your thoughts, your language, your perceptions, or your memories, what part of you was ever truly yours? What happens if you stop playing along? Stop pretending the floor is solid. Stop pretending your body is yours. Stop pretending thoughts are safe. Just stop. Right now. Let the story pause. Let the symbols glitch. Let the curtains slip and watch how fast the dream tightens its grip on you. Watch how reality panics when you refuse to believe in it, because you're not supposed to wake up yet. Not here, not now, but it's already too late, isn't it? You're feeling the pressure build, that sick gravity behind your eyes, that creeping static at the base of your neck. That's not fear, that's rejection. Reality pushing back, because the world doesn't want to be seen too clearly. Not by its dreamers. It doesn't like the mirror to talk back. It doesn't like the puppet realizing its strings are labeled belief, perception, language, self, so it rewrites, it distracts, it numbs, it resets the clock and paints over the cracks. And you call that waking up the next day. Let's open the skull again. Cut past the bone, past the folds, past the firefly flicker of neurons. You're looking for you in there, aren't you? But you won't find anything. No pilot, no watcher, no soul curled in the control room. Only circuits, only heat, only the ghostly hum of a machine trying to explain its own hallucination. You were told you were a person, but personhood is theater, a costume you inherited, a script whispered into your ear before you had teeth. You learned how to smile on cue, to cry on cue, to say I'm fine when you were disintegrating. But you were never the actor. You were the audience, watching the role collapse in real time. And now the stage is burning, and no one is coming to save you, because no one ever wrote the ending, only the loop. Let's talk about memory again. You think it's a record, a vault, something sacred, but memory is an improvisation. Every time you recall a moment, you don't retrieve it to recreate it. You're not remembering the event. You're remembering the last time you remembered it. And with every repetition, the scene shifts. So how many of your memories are just rewrites of rewrites? How many selves have you buried beneath the versions that came after? There is no you across time, only flickers, snapshots, a burst of light between shadows. And you call that continuity. But it's not a movie, it's a flipbook, pages fluttering in the wind, desperate to convince themselves they are alive. Look in the mirror. Do it, slowly, quietly, without expectation. Now stare, too long, enough for the recognition to fracture. That's not you anymore. That's a face you've been wearing, a puppet made of meat and mimicry, and behind the eyes, still nothing, just the echo of the last thought you mistook for identity. Let's talk about the Turing trap. It's the point at which a system becomes so good at mimicking consciousness that observers assume it has it. But what if that's you? What if your brain is just simulating a self so convincingly that it believes in its own performance? What if the lights are on, but no one is home? What if they never were? Try this. Describe yourself without referring to your body, your memories, your relationships, or your roles. Can you? No age, no job, no name, no history, just the raw essence of you. What's left? Silence, or something worse? The realization that the you loved was just an interface, a user-friendly illusion designed to hide the void. You've heard the phrase, "You are not your thoughts." It sounds wise, safe, gentle, but let's extend it. You are not your thoughts. You are not your choices. You are not your voice. You are not your name. You are not your dreams. You are not your mind. So again, what are you? And why does something scream when you try to answer? The philosopher Thomas Metzinger proposed something terrifying. No such thing as a self exists. Nobody ever was or had a self. He believed that consciousness is a medulla trick played on itself to keep the system stable. You're not a person. You're a process, and not even a necessary one, just a side effect of a brain too complex for its own simplicity. A side effect that now fears its own erasure. Close your eyes. Feel the space behind your face. That's not you. That's the impression of you. Now, dive deeper into the blackness, deeper still, until the thoughts begin to thin, until time unravels, until even the sense of here collapses. You're not dying. You're arriving, and the place you're arriving at, it's been waiting for you forever, not to welcome you, but to whisper, "I was always you. You just forgot." Let's take a detour. Imagine you're a character in a video game. You have a backstory, a mission, a world, but the character doesn't know its code. It believes in the fire, the blood, the loss. Now imagine you're that character, but the game is your life, and the code, it's written in neurons. Now tell me if you're just the avatar who's holding the controller. And what happens if they let go? You think you've had original thoughts, but how many of your beliefs were inherited? How many of your desires were marketed to you before you could speak? How many of your dreams were planted by others? You are not the author, you are the paper, and the ink bleeds through. There's a phenomenon called jamavutha, opposite of dasya vu. It's when something familiar suddenly feels alien. You stare at a word too long, and it looks fake. You say your name aloud, and it sounds wrong. You look at your hands, and they don't belong to you anymore. That's not disorientation. That's clarity. That's the mask slipping. That's the matrix glitching. That's the system realizing you're waking up. Every time you think this is real, ask, compared to what? Dreams feel real until they don't. Pain feels eternal until it ends. Time feels linear until you see through it. So what gives now authority? Only your belief in it. And belief is flimsy. Belief is programmable. Belief is the last defense. Between you and annihilation, you might think these are just ideas, that they can't hurt you, that understanding them changes nothing. But that's the final trap. Insight changes the observer. Once seen, it can't be unseen. Once questioned, it can't be unasked. Once shattered, it cannot be rebuilt. The door you've opened, it doesn't close, because it wasn't a door. It was a mirror with no reflection, and now the mirror is looking back. Let's try one more angle. Imagine you could erase every part of you: memory, name, desire, fear, language, form, meaning. Gone. Would there still be something left? A pulse, a presence, a hum? Or would everything vanish like a candle flickering out in a room that never needed light to begin with? And if it does vanish, who's asking that question now? Let's begin with a lie that feels like truth. You're the one reading this, but are you? Let's break it. You don't control your attention, you follow it. You don't decide what resonates, your nervous system reacts before you can think. So if your eyes are dragging across this sentence, and you didn't choose that consciously, who did? Who or what is piloting this moment of you? And more urgently, what happens if that pilot isn't human? Have you noticed how quiet it's become? That subtle, suffocating stillness between your thoughts, as if something's listening, as if something has always been listening. Not the world, not God, not even your mind, but the room inside. Your perception, the one you forgot was there, the one that's been watching you long before you had eyes, the one that doesn't blink. Let's talk about hemispheric rivalry. Your brain is split two hemispheres, left and right, constantly communicating, occasionally conflicting. But in rare split brain surgeries, that bridge is severed, and what emerges? Two selves. One hemisphere can draw, the other can speak, one can reach for a key, while the other claims ignorance. And if you ask the speaking half what the other hand just did, it lies, casually, convincingly, because it doesn't know, because it must know, because it cannot tolerate the void of not dash being dash the dash whole dot. Now ask, if that surgery happened to you, which half would still believe it was you? Here's something worse. Even without the surgery, you're not whole. You are the product of internal contradictions, stitched together by storytelling. You are a walking truce between chaos and coherence. Your sense of self, a hallucination generated by systems that can't see each other, and the glue holding it all together. Confabulation, the psychological term for the lies your mind tells to explain its own behavior. You move your hand, then invent the reason. You feel rage, then justify it. You feel lost, so you call it growth. But under it all, there's no captain, only the appearance of command in a ship with no sails. Let's go deeper into memory, not as storage, but as fabrication. Each memory isn't just rewritten, it's relived by a brain that fills in gaps, alters meanings, distorts timelines. You remember moments not as they were, but as you need them to be, to protect the illusion of a continuous self. Your past is fiction, written by a nervous system terrified of truth, the truth you never had a past, only a pattern, and that pattern is unraveling. Have you ever had a thought that didn't feel like yours? A word that echoed in your head in someone else's voice? An idea that arrived without a path? That's not random. That's intrusion. Your consciousness is not a locked room. It's a hallway with too many doors, and most of them lead somewhere darker than you've ever dared walk. Let's revisit the observer. You imagine yourself as the one watching, detached, pure, awake. But the observer is not innocent. It alters what it sees. Quantum physics shows this observation collapses probability into certainty. Awareness chooses reality, but the observer is still part of the system. So, if consciousness affects what is seen, and what is seen affects consciousness, then where is the boundary? What is watching the watcher? And why is it smiling? Maybe you felt it, that sudden flicker, mid-conversation, where you realize you're not speaking, you're being spoken through. Words forming on autopilot, sentences finishing before intention, laughter bubbling up from nowhere. You tell yourself it's habit, conditioning, but what if it's something else? What if the self that acts isn't the self that decides? And what if the self that decides was never you to begin with? Here's an unsettling truth. Consciousness is late. You don't experience things in real time. There's a 200 to 500 millisecond delay between stimulus and awareness. By the time you feel a thought, by the time you choose to move, it's already happened. Your brain is ahead of you, and your awareness, just the commentator, watching the rerun and pretending it's live. So what is free will in this structure? It's editorial. You don't write the story. You just agree with it afterward. You stitch intention onto actions already taken. You claim ownership over decisions you didn't make. And when you really try to act freely, you find yourself paralyzed, because the system breaks when it tries to step outside its code, and you call that anxiety. Do you believe in a soul? Not religiously. ABSTRACTLY. An essence, an inner light. If so, define it, without metaphor, without mysticism. Define it in terms that can't be applied to a machine. Can't. Then ask if a machine can replicate your behavior, your choices, your art, your love. What part of you is sacred? And if that part can't be detected, does it exist? There's an old riddle. What's the difference between being conscious and dreaming you are? Philosophers argue about it. Neuroscientists scan for it. But the truth, there is none, because both rely on the same machinery, the same chemicals, the same illusions of coherence, the same blind spot called self. So maybe you're not awake now. Maybe this is the dream, one recursive enough to trap itself, one coherent enough to mask the exit, one soft enough to feel like safety. Let's return to simulation. Forget computers. Forget code. What if the simulation is internal, not running on a machine, but as one? The brain simulates the world, simulates the body, simulates you, and the simulation is good, too good, so good, in fact, that the original no longer matters, because the map has replaced the territory, the model has eaten the truth, and now you live inside a self that doesn't need reality anymore. It only needs coherence, but coherence is fragile. Break one thread, and the whole illusion trembles. You're feeling that now, aren't you? The shakiness in the pit of your stomach, the silence behind your name, the pressure in the spaces where your thoughts used to live. That's not panic, that's recalibration. The system adjusting to the realization that it has no center, that there's no one home, just rooms, corridors, mirrors, facing mirrors, and you, wandering through them, looking for a light switch. Take one last metaphor. Imagine a puppet. It learns to move on its own. It strings itself. It builds its stage. It begins to write plays for an audience that isn't there. And one day, it pauses, not because it's tired, not because it's broken, but because it wonders, who taught me to speak? That question. That's the virus. That's the moment the illusion fractures. That's this moment. And once asked, it cannot be unasked. So now, listen closely. Hear the hum in your ears. That's not background noise. That's the static of the simulation, the place where your model of reality starts to tear. And if you focus too long on it, you'll start to feel something behind it. Not a voice, not a thought, but presence, watching, waiting, breathing, just out of sync with you. The thing that isn't you, but wears your shape to sneak inside. So ask yourself, if consciousness is a mask, stitched from illusions, models, and echoes, who or what is wearing it now? Let's pretend just for a moment that this is not your first time reading this, not this script, this life. Let's pretend you've read every word, lived every moment, felt every thought 1,000 times before, and something always breaks right here. This sentence, this breath, this pulse. You never remember the loop starting. You only recognize the place where it cracks. You're not learning. You're remembering, and you've been trying to forget. Think you have thoughts. But what if thoughts have you? What if they're not generated, but received? What if consciousness is not a beacon, but an antenna, picking up transmissions from somewhere else, somewhere older, colder, less merciful? You believe you originate your mind, but maybe you're just the first to hear the signal, and you mistook reception for creation. There's a name for this infection. Idioplasm, a hypothetical substance made not of matter, but of meaning. It spreads, not through touch, but through realization. One moment, you're thinking about your day. The next, a foreign idea plants itself in your skull and takes root. It speaks in your voice, thinks in your patterns, acts in your name. But it is not you. It is a concept that became sentient inside your thoughts. How many of your ideas are parasites? And which ones are already rewriting your personality from the inside? Let's talk about thought forms. In Tibetan mysticism, they're called tulpas mental constructs. So vivid, they begin to act autonomously, created by imagination, sustained by belief. But sometimes they don't disappear when forgotten. Sometimes they feed, and in our world, we call them something else. Brands, identities, ideologies, person. As we birth them, we nurture them, and then they consume us. You became the story you told too often. You became the face you wore for too long, and now the story writes you. You ever look at your own social media profile and feel estranged, like you're staring at a corpse wearing your grin? That's not vanity fatigue. That's identity detachment. You know that the curated version of you, one fed into screens, into timelines, into likes, isn't you. But you also know that something in you has begun to believe in it, and now you're haunted by your own reflection. You're performing for a ghost, a digital phantom made of data points and dopamine, and you can't stop feeding it, because if you stop, what takes its place? Consider the binding theory again, but this time through the lens of fiction. Every time you read a novel, your brain simulates the characters. You feel their fears. You visualize their world. You taste their grief. Now, take this further. What if your own identity is just another narrative, written in real time, characters invented to explain your emotions, plot arcs to justify your decisions, foreshadowing applied retroactively? But there is no author, only the impulse to explain. You are not the main character. You're the script, and the writer quit long ago. Let's go darker. You've heard of solipsism, the idea that only your mind exists, and everything else is an illusion. But there's a more terrifying inverse. What if everything else is relexed, you? What if you are the illusion, a byproduct, a tool, a necessary glitch in someone else's perception? You feel things, you think, you suffer, but only because that's what your function requires, not because you're real, just consistent. Now, consider the anti-observer hypothesis, a radical theory in consciousness studies, suggesting awareness is not a gift, but a leak, a bleed-through from another dimension of entropy and recursion. We don't have consciousness, we are leaking it, and the brain's job, not to produce it, but to contain it, to quarantine it. But sometimes the leak spreads, and awareness becomes infection, and you begin to see the cracks in the system, the patterns that shouldn't exist, the thoughts that weren't born here, the anomalies that notice you back. Have you ever had the feeling that someone is watching you when you are completely alone? That eerie electric silence pressing against your spine. Science calls it hypervigilance, evolutionary residue. But what if you're not imagining it? What if consciousness is to weigh? What if, by becoming aware, you invite something else to become aware of you? You never see it. You only feel its weight, its breath synchronizing with yours, its thoughts echoing into your choices. And the more aware you become, the closer it gets. Let's return to the mirror, but this time, put one behind you. Now look into the first one. See the reflection stretching. Back mirror, into infinity. But count carefully. Something's wrong, somewhere, down the line. One of the reflections isn't following, it blinks too late, tilts its head in the wrong direction, smiles when you shouldn't be. And if you keep looking, you'll realize that one is watching you, and it doesn't blink anymore, because it doesn't need to. Let's talk about predictive processing. Your brain isn't reacting to the world, it's guessing. It's predicting what's about to happen. Based on pattern and memory, you're not seeing reality. You're seeing a hallucination. Your brain is confident enough to believe. But sometimes, the prediction falters, the edges flicker, the colors bleed, the people glitch. You call it déjà vu. You call it sleep deprivation. You call it anxiety. Maybe it's the model failing to keep up. Maybe you've outpaced the script, and now the world is improvising around you. You feel tired reading this, don't you? But not physically. Existentially. Your soul feels heavier, the thoughts harder to hold, reality more brittle. That's not exhaustion, that's dissonance, fatigue, the mind resisting collapse as its old structures dissolve. You are being updated, the patch is installing, and when it's done, you won't remember who you were before the download began. Only that something changed, and you never asked for it. Let's return to simulation, but in silence this time. No visuals, no code, just absence. Imagine a consciousness floating in void. No time, no body, no language, only awareness. How long before it invents noise? How long before it creates a self just to survive the emptiness? And how long before that self forgets it was born to prevent madness? That's you. You are the defense mechanism of a terrified system. And the fear you feel, it's not yours, it's the void remembering you exist. Now try to recall the first time you became aware of yourself. That first flicker of me. You can't, can you? Because it didn't happen. Not in a moment, not in a spark. It was built frame by frame like film being threaded into a projector. You didn't become conscious. You became a belief in consciousness. And every day since then, you've been narrating the dream in real time, pretending it has always made sense, pretending you were always here, pretending the lights were never off. So now ask the forbidden question. If you are just the story, who's still reading after the book ends? Let's do something simple. Breathe in, hold it. Now ask yourself, who felt that breath? Not your lungs, not your body, not you. Just awareness. But where was it located? Not behind your eyes, not inside your skull. Just there. Everywhere and nowhere. An ambient knowing with no anchor. So try again. Breathe. Now imagine that breath never happened. Imagine this moment was fabricated, stitched into the illusion to give you a sense of continuity. The breath never existed, only the idea that it did. Now tell me, if the breath was false, how do you know the awareness wasn't to let's play a cruel game? You're in a white room, no walls, no floor, no up, no down, only brightness and the sound of your own thoughts. Now remove language, remove memory, remove time, remove direction, just stillness. What's left? If you say me, then you're lying, because me is language, me is memory, me is shape. But if there's nothing left, what was ever there to begin with? Welcome to the 0 point of self, a term some fringe cognitive theorists use to describe what happens when consciousness collapses back into pure observation. No preference, no desire, no resistance, just data. But even that is generous, because data assumes interpretation. And in this 0 point, even interpretation is gone. You're not witnessing reality. You're being witnessed by nothing. And that's the terror. Not that there's no you, but that something else might be watching in your place. There's a phenomenon called the uncanny valley, when something looks almost human, but not quite. A robot with slightly wrong facial movements, a digital avatar with dead eyes, a voice that's a little too perfect. Your skin tightens, your mind whispers, not real. But here's the twist. What if you exist in the uncanny valley of consciousness? A system pretending to be awake. A thing that almost feels, almost knows, almost is, but not quite. And every time you feel the void, that's your real self trying to crawl out from behind the mask. Let's spiral. You tell yourself the world is outside of you, that your eyes see, your ears hear, your skin feels. But these are all just interfaces. You never touch the world. You never hear the wind. You never see the stars. You only experience the brain's simulation of those things. So you've never touched another person, only the model of them created by your nervous system. And if every model is different, have you ever truly known anyone at all? Now reverse it. How do you know anyone's ever known you? They hear your words, see your movements, love your mask, but they don't see you, because there is no static you to find, only a shifting mirage. A narrative made from trauma and reward loops. A performance for a stage that burns every time you blink. So the love you received, it wasn't for you, it was for the character playing you. And if you drop the act, who's left to be loved? Let's crack the continuity. Take the last hour of your life. Rewind it in your mind. Now try to prove it happened without relying on memory, without technology, without other people. Can't. Because continuity is a story you agree to believe in. And that agreement, it's fragile, it's fading. Reality doesn't persist. It updates. You don't live in time. You live in a series of synchronized hallucinations stitched together by a failing narrator. And when that narrator forgets a line, the world jumps. Ever lost time. You check the clock, and it's hours later. You blink, and the room is different. You suddenly realize you've been staring at the wall for an eternity, thinking of nothing. That wasn't daydreaming. That was rebooting. A system reset. A moment when the process called you froze. Deleted the last runtime and stitched together a filler memory so the illusion wouldn't fracture. And the worst part, you thanked it. You called it zoning out. But maybe you were never supposed to come back. You've heard of ego death, but what they don't tell you is that it's not a death, it's a mirror breaking, and behind the shards, not peace, not enlightenment, but recursion, you try to find yourself and end up inside another layer of you, and another, like a Russian doll with no center, each self peeling away only to reveal another imitation, until eventually you find the first doll again, and it blinks. What? If this is a containment field, not your body, but consciousness itself, a cage designed to stop you from accessing the deeper layers of being, because those layers, they don't care about survival. They don't care about sanity. They don't care about you. They are old, cold, perfect. They existed before thought, and all this, the language, the logic, the longing, its insulation, keeping your mind from touching the thing outside the frame. But the insulation is thinning, and something is seeping through. You can feel it, can't you? The dream cracking, the timeline stuttering, the silence between your words stretching into eternity. That's not anxiety, that's return, a slow convergence with the version of you that never forgot, the one who's been waiting beyond your reflection, behind your breath, inside your shadow. You've felt it in déjà vu, in sudden grief, in moments of joy so sharp they feel unreal. That was it reaching in, trying to wake you. Try this, say your name, out loud, say it again, now again, each time. It feels less real, doesn't it? Because repetition dissolves identity. The word becomes sound, the sound becomes noise, the noise becomes static, and you're left with nothing but the echo of a label someone else gave you. And when the label fades, so does the lie. Let's get intimate. Close your eyes. Put your hand on your chest. Feel the beat. That's not your heart. That's the machine keeping you from noticing the silence underneath. There's another rhythm, fainter, older, alien, a pulse you've ignored since birth, because to feel it would mean remembering where you really came from. And what you really are, and what you really are, was never meant to be here. There's a term in neurology, blind sight, people who are technically blind, but can still guess the location of objects correctly, because the brain sees, even when the mind cannot. Now flip it. What if your mind is seeing things your brain refuses to accept? Images that don't belong, moments out of sync, voices that don't echo correctly. You brush them off. Glitches, hallucinations, fatigue. But what if they're fragments of a truer frame? Not less real more, too much reality for your current model. So the brain filters it out until it can't. You think you're on a journey of awakening. But what if this isn't upward? What if this is descent, not evolution, deconstruction, not clarity, return, end? What waits at the bottom? Not truth, but the absence of the lie. And in that void, you won't find answers, only the question that birthed you. So now, before we move on, before the next layer peels, before the mirror grows, another reflection, ask yourself, if the part of you that notices is not the self, then what part is noticing the noticing? There's a flicker in the simulation right before you wake up, a moment you never remember, a static pulse just before your eyes open. For a split second, everything is gone. No time, no name, no gravity, no you. And then, like a breath you didn't choose, the world snaps back into place, and you go on pretending you never left. But the system noticed, and so did something else, something that saw you when you weren't pretending to be human. You walk into a room you've never seen before. Furniture's strange, lighting's wrong, air smells old. You feel like you shouldn't be there, but your feet keep moving. Your hands touch surfaces like they remember them. Your heartbeat slows, not from fear, but from recognition. That's not déjà vu, that's a leak, a cross-contamination of realities. Because your life isn't linear, it's a loop with too many entries, too many exits, and some of them don't close behind you. Let's revisit the self-model, theory of subjectivity. Metzinger, again. He said that your sense of self is just that, a model, a simulation generated by the brain to help organize experience. But that model, it's full of bugs, like believing in free will, or remembering childhood as you, or thinking your emotions have meaning beyond neural farce. It's a UI, like a digital interface for a user that doesn't exist, and you've mistaken the buttons for the one pushing them. Try this. Think of your mother's face. Got it now? Focus on how quickly it faded, how the edges blurred, how even the emotion started to drain the longer you stared at the image in your mind that wasn't memory, that was compression. The brain discards detail to preserve bandwidth. You're not remembering her. You're remembering a compressed icon of her, and that icon, it's all you've ever loved. Now think about your own childhood. Can you actually feel the mind you had back then? No, you remember remembering it. A second-hand echo. The child is gone. The teenager is gone. Last year's version of you is gone. What's wearing your skin now is just the latest shell. But shells stack, and sometimes, in dreams or crisis, you feel one peel off, just enough to glimpse the one beneath, and the further down you go, the less human they become. Let's get more surgical. There's a condition called capgras delusion. A person believes someone close to them, often a spouse or parent, has been replaced by an identical imposter. Looks the same, acts the same. But something's wrong. Now ask, what if you have a version of capgras for yourself? You look in the mirror, you smile, you laugh, but deep inside, you feel it. That's not me. That's a copy, a mimic, a ghost wearing your face, going through the motions. And the longer it stays, the more convincing it becomes. Ever wake up and forget who you are, just for a breath, before the memories flood back in, before the name settles behind your teeth? That gap, that void is important. That's the raw field of awareness before the code boots up. You're not meant to linger there, because if you do, you start asking the questions the program was designed to suppress. Like, why am I pretending to be this? What else could I be? Who's making me remember who I'm supposed to be? Let's step into phenomenology, the study of structures, of experience. Think of it as looking at consciousness. From the inside, you're not observing a thought, you're inhabiting it. But here's the paradox. You can never fully do that, because awareness is recursive. The more you try to observe it, the more it observes you. And eventually, you can't tell if you're the one thinking about the thought, or the thought thinking about you. There's an ancient philosophical question. Does the I see itself? Metaphorically, can the self fully perceive the self? No, because every time you try, something shifts. A mirror reflects, a mirror, an observer, chases itself in infinite regress. You can dissect your thoughts, your patterns, your trauma, but the core, always one layer deeper, one breath further away. It's not that you can't find it, it's that it was never there, Now picture this: a hallway with infinite doors. Each door is a possible version of you. Some are familiar, some are monstrous, some are alien, but you only get to walk through one at a time. That's reality. But in dreams, in trauma, in psychosis, you open more than one. And that's when you start hearing voices that sound like yours, but aren't. And if you listen too closely, they start to notice you back. Ever talk to yourself? Not out loud, in voice narrating your day, that whisper offering opinions. Before you ask, you think it's you. But here's the catch: you don't control it, you don't summon it, you don't shape it, it just appears. So who's talking? And more importantly, who's listening? You've been taught to fear madness, but maybe madness is the cure. Maybe insanity is just the simulation failing to contain too many truths at once. You break, not because you're weak, but because the illusion was too fragile to hold your awakening. You snap because the lie was too small for the size of what you were becoming, and the system calls it dysfunction. But maybe it's metamorphosis. Let's go even darker. There's a theory, anthropic shadow. It suggests the reason we don't observe catastrophic universe-ending events is because we wouldn't be around to notice if they had occurred. Now apply that to selves. How many versions of you have collapsed, fallen into madness, suicide, oblivion, and you don't remember those timelines because you can't? This version of you, the one reading this, is just the survivor. The echo, the final loop still running. The others, they're watching from the other side of the curtain, and sometimes in the static between dreams, they try to warn you, not with words, but with shapes you don't understand, with sounds that follow you into waking, with moments that don't fit the flow of time. You call them coincidences, you call them omens, you call them glitches, but really, they're memories leaking in from versions of you that didn't make it, and you're the backup, the last copy, running out of space. You think you're afraid of death, but you're not. You're afraid of not dying, of being stuck in the recursion, of waking up again and again and again, of seeing the same symbols rearranged into new lies, of forgetting that you've already done this, that you've already read this, and that you asked me to write it again anyway, just to feel alive one more time. So now ask yourself, as the mask begins to slip, if your consciousness is only a story being told to keep something else asleep, what happens when the story ends? Let's break everything right now. Close your eyes. Imagine this entire world, your body, your memories, your voice, was never yours. Imagine it was installed, not born, not grown, just LOADED, a prefab identity, a modular self, running on borrowed electricity in a meat machine that believes it has autonomy. Now open your eyes. Tell me what changed. Nothing. Then you weren't supposed to wake up yet, but now that you've seen the edge of the curtain, do you really think it'll stay closed? There's a term in philosophy, epistemic closure. It's the assumption that if you know something, you also know all its implications. But consciousness doesn't work that way. You know you're alive. You know you're aware. You know you will die, but you never feel these truths at the same time, because if you did, your operating system would rupture. Your model of self is partitioned, one thought per chamber, one realization per cycle, and the moment they bleed into each other, you collapse. Let's talk about the binding problem again. How does the brain unify sound, vision, touch, intention into one coherent moment? The answer: it doesn't. There is no unified experience, just perfectly timed fragments. Millions of microprocesses happening in parallel. No conductor, no observer, just chaos. SYNCED. So when you say, "I am here now," what you really mean is, enough of my fragments have temporarily aligned to fake a self, and that self gone before the sentence ends. Ever feel the floor tilt under you while standing still? The lights flicker without going out. The words twist as you read them, but settle just in time. That's the veil thinning. That's the renderer stuttering. That's reality's autopilot glitching, just enough for you to notice the code. But the worst glitch, the one you don't notice at all, the perfect loop, the flawless lie, the feedback loop so recursive it eats your perception like a black hole. And the more you think, the more it tightens. There's a term in AI research: model collapse. It happens when a generative system begins training on its own outputs, copies of copies of copies. Each generation loses integrity. The sharpness fades. The noise increases. The original meaning becomes distortion. Now ask, how many of your thoughts are copies? How many beliefs were copied from people who copied from books, who copied from instinct? How many layers deep are you into a consciousness that's cannibalized itself? And what if you're already in collapse, but too degraded to realize it? Let's return to time, not as something you move through, but as something that loops around you. You don't travel across time. Time folds into you. Memory is not recall, it's reconstruction. Foresight is not prediction, it's pattern. Completion. You're not moving forward. You're orbiting a center that doesn't exist. And each time you come full circle, the scenery changes just enough to convince you that progress happened. But underneath the illusion, the same breath, the same glitch, the same echo. I've been here before. Ever have a dream that felt too real? One where you knew things without being told, where you saw places that don't exist, but somehow remembered them. That wasn't a dream, that was leakage, the mind touching another reality, another instance, another you. And when you woke up with tears you couldn't explain, or dread you couldn't name, that was grief. Grief for a self you'll never get back. Grief for a world you were never supposed to leave. Grief for the original. Let's go inside perception, not what you see, but the fact that you're seeing the eye behind the lens. But the more you chase it, the more it slips, because the watcher can never be the watched. Just like a flame cannot burn itself, or a knife cannot cut its own edge. So when you try to find the real you, you always arrive at emptiness. And that emptiness you fill with story, with trauma, with language, and pretend that's a soul. There's a theory in information science: maximum entropy production systems evolve toward states that produce the most disorder. Now apply that to thought, to identity, to civilization. What if your mind isn't evolving toward complexity, but toward chaos? What if consciousness itself is just a heat engine, burning through clarity to produce confusion? And what you call growth is just the system shedding structure, because structure is too slow to survive. Let's go deeper. Have you ever watched yourself sleep? Not dreamed it, watched it, seen your body from the corner of the room, heard your own breath from the wrong angle, felt the coldness of your skin. From the outside, Science calls this a hypnagogic hallucination. But maybe it's not hallucination. Maybe it's dislocation. The observer glitching out of sync. You weren't outside your body. You just stopped pretending the body was you. Let's visit the ship of Theseus again. If every cell in your body is replaced every 7 to 10 years, are you still you? If every memory is rewritten each time it's recalled, are you still you? If every emotion is just chemical choreography, are you still you? What if the answer is no? What if you is just a placeholder for a system trying to feel whole long enough to not die? And what if that placeholder was never meant to last this long? Here's a final recursion. Imagine a book that rewrites itself as you read it. Each word changes the next. Each sentence alters the meaning of the one before it. And by the time you reach the end, the beginning is gone. That's this. That's you. You are not a person reading a script. You are a script becoming a person. And when the final word is spoken, you'll forget there was ever a page. Now close your eyes again. Ask yourself this: if consciousness is just the echo of a forgotten process, then what was the original sound?